a little frustrated by even the process of making a book, because I'm a visual person, and the process by which publishers usually make books is there's a text that's written, and then there are visuals that are created after the text. Where the visual is related to the text can be very haphazard. You can be, forcing people to flip back and forth. And my history was in infographics and art, and I really didn't want to. I wanted to have a lot more control over a book than that. And so I started, and Jay didn't mention this, but he had been, I believe, doing his books using PowerPoint. And that was something I had tucked away also. And so I carry a sketchbook with me wherever I go. I had been carrying a sketchbook for many years, since I was a teenager, I think. Carrying a sketchbook, recording thoughts, recording ideas, and there was an idea in my head that these things would come together somehow into a book. And I was talking to a couple of professors I know, and professors have often publishing as a part of their career path and making their bones, I guess. And the professor that I was talking to, I told him I was working on a book, and he told me a joke. Have you heard this one, Jay? Two professors meet, and one of them says, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a while. What have you been up to?" And the other professor says, "Oh, well, I'm writing a book." And the first professor says, "Oh, really? Neither am I." And, as you can imagine, the idea being that, this is something that all professors and people who have ideas say they're doing. So, anyway, the joke is about writing books. So, what I realized was that the list of things that I wanted to get into my book was growing faster than I could ever complete them. So if I was going to continue to work on the book until it was finished, I would be working on it forever, and no one would ever get to read it. And I started to get more and more people. I go out and do workshops, and I give talks, and people are always asking me for the slides, and the slides don't really represent the ideas very well, because when I talk, a lot of the ideas are expressed verbally, and the pictures are just triggers to help me remember ideas. So I felt like I needed to get something out there for people who were asking these questions, and so I decided to publish an Unbook. And this is the first one. It's called Marks and Meaning, and this is my first one anyway. And it was really just a kind of a first draft. Not even I wouldn't even call it a book. I would call it a first draft set of notes for a book, and it had a lot of pictures, some exercises, some ideas. For people who had seen me speak or been through a workshop, it meant a lot more than for people who were just going to pick it up ragged. So I didn't talk about it too much publicly, unless people had been through a talk or something. I would mention it. And the way I had set it up and the way I envisioned it was as a dialogue with the community. So this first book, first version, I titled it version 0. I put it up online with a warning sign, a warning label saying, "Warning, don't buy this book," with the expectation that it's going to be a book, etc. And I invited the people who bought the book to join an email discussion group. And what I learned was that the dialogue with the community was incredibly valuable, and it actually, I can't envision writing a book any other way. And now that I've done this, and now I'm on version just published recently, version 0.5. It's about 50% new. It's evolving very rapidly, and probably about 50% of the original book is no longer there. So it's really, people ask questions about, well, why should I buy an unfinished book? And I think there's a value to seeing process. I mean, why would you buy Da Vinci's notebooks? Because there's a huge value. Why do people want to see Einstein's notes? Why do people want to see, unfinished works by great artists? There's something about the process, and there's something about understanding the work and immersing yourself in something that's unfinished that's profoundly valuable. I actually would prefer to see books that are unfinished and see them evolve. The way I see this book, this is such a big book conceptually that this Marks and Meaning book that I don't think it'll ever be finished. So, people ask me, well, when's it going to be finished? I think I'll wait for the finished one. Well, I mean, my answer to that is you're going to be waiting a long time, because at least probably till I die, because and even then it'll be unfinished. Picasso said a couple of things that I think are relevant, and Picasso, I got to say, is one of my heroes. Not for how he lived his life necessarily, but for how he thought about creativity. And a couple of the quotes are: the first one is, "You should begin with an idea, but it should be a vague idea." This is different than the traditional publisher's way of thinking about a book, where you basically, in order to make a book proposal, you have to already know everything that's in the book. Well, that's a little bit of a problem for me, because I know, you might have learned a lot of things in the course of your life, but you don't necessarily know what the organizing scheme is till you start to put them together and start to write them. That's number one. So I think you should begin with a vague idea, because that allows you to listen to the people who are reading and to adjust and to build something in a more collaborative way. The second thing that Picasso said was that you should always leave a work of art unfinished, because if a work of art is finished, there's nothing for the audience or the viewer to contribute. And I think one of the reasons that people like to read books, and in some ways people like books without pictures, is because you finish the book, you create the pictures in your mind. And so I'm a big fan of the unfinished book, and I think that it offers a lot of. It's really an open enough concept that and a movement that I think anyone can build their ideas using this way. And it's not just the idea of publishing something that's unfinished for me, and I think Jay talked about this too. It's about engaging with the community. It's about connecting with readers. Authors have always done this. They've always, I mean, not all authors, but many. Some authors lock themselves in a tower and finish a perfect book and come back.